Attention all personnel. Incoming podcast. This is MASH Matters.
It's the most wonderful time of the year.
Dun, 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 dun. That's all I got. I don't know any. I don't know the rest of it.
Okay. We probably would have to pay royalties on it anyway, so we probably need to stop right there.
Yeah.
I am Ryan Patrick alongside my friend, Mr. Jeff Maxwell. Hello, Jeff.
Hello, Ryan Patrick. You're still Ryan Patrick. You've been Ryan Patrick for a long time now.
Well, until the bill collectors catch up with me, that's what I'm going to stick with.
Yeah, why not? It's a good moniker. It's a good name, Ryan Patrick. You could have been like a quarterback or a football team or something.
Yeah, like a Notre Dame.
Notre Dame. Yeah.
Jeff, this is a big episode for a few reasons. One, we have a major announcement. And when I say major, I mean it is a major announcement coming at the end of the episode. Also, we have a big story to share in this episode. It's a story that we have been talking about for a long time because this is the infamous episode 28 that a lot of people have been waiting for, Jeff.
Is it really? This is episode 28? Are you sure? It may be 27?
We did 26 and a half. We did 27 and 3/4.
Yeah.
And now we're finally here at episode 28. So that's going to be coming up here in just a little bit. But first, we talked about an episode or two ago, we were talking about people meeting members of the MASH cast. And I shared some of my stories about getting to meet Mike Farrell and Loretta Swit and Jamie Farr and standing backstage with Bill Christopher while he was wearing his priest outfit. And then we put the call out there. If anybody else has had any other encounters with members of the MASH cast, we'd love to hear about it. And we got a few in, so I thought we would kick off episode 28 by just going through a couple of these stories, like the one from Charlene Christian. She said, you asked if anyone's ever met any of the cast. When I was about 17 or 18 years old, Alan Alda was passing through my hometown on the way to take his daughter to the University of Connecticut. They stopped at a small diner called Herb's. Of course, I had no idea Alan Alda was there when I walked in. As soon as I realized that the man was sitting there, I had to turn around and leave. I was so starstruck.
Oh, gosh.
Fast forward to last year, Alan Alda was doing his one-man show. I went and bought his book and had him sign it. It took me until the age of 52 to finally get the courage to at least speak to the man.
I imagine it was a long time before Herb invited Alan back to his diner because people run out the door when they see him.
I know, right? It was bad for business.
Yeah, bad for all is bad for business. Don't let them come in your restaurant.
I mean, how surreal would that be? You walk into your hometown diner and there's Hawkeye Pierce.
Yeah.
That would be a little startling.
A little startling, yeah. But I don't know, kind of to run out. Well, I'm not going to dump on you, Charlene, but to run out of the room, for God's sakes, come on. And Mark Posey, our friend Mark Posey says, hey, Ryan and Jeff, loving the podcast. Well, that's great. Mark, you could say that anytime you write in.
That's right.
You asked for listeners to post stories of meeting members of the cast. I have two, actually. I don't know if Jeff remembers it, but back around the time Secrets of the MASH Mess, The Lost Recipes of Private Igor, that book I wrote, came out, I was running a book promotion and writing a website, and Jeff and I did a telephone interview that was posted on the site. Cool. I don't remember that, but I'm sure we had a good time. Jeff was also nice enough to sign the copy of the book I bought before it was sent to me, and it has been well used. Well, thank you, Mark. Also, back in the early 90s, Loretta Swit and I exchanged letters and phone calls for a while when she was in town for a 3-month run as Shirley Valentine. Spectacular play, super lady, and that is the truth. Cool, Mark. Thank you. That's kind of fun.
And it's so interesting because, Mark, you and I have similar experiences. As I've mentioned on here before, how Jeff and I first connected, I was working in radio and working on a morning show, and Jeff had written his cookbook. And so he came on our morning show as a guest to talk about the cookbook. And that was the first time that you and I ever talked.
That's true.
Back in 1999, around 20 so years ago.
I was 11. I was 11 years old. And I was an old 11, but I was 11 when we did that.
So, we met that way. And then Loretta Swit actually came to our town back about that time as well with her show, Shirley Valentine. The problem was I was doing another show at the time. I like to act. So I was in a show at another college across town. And so I did not get to see her show. However, I knew the folks at the theater over where she was performing. And so what happened was I was doing my show and I did the curtain call. I took my bow. I walked off stage, walked out of the theater, got in my car and drove over to her show, snuck in and watched the last 15 minutes of Loretta performing Shirley Valentine. And then my friends ushered me backstage where I got to shake her hand and have her sign a program for me. So it's so interesting that those are the two connections that he had, and they're so similar to connections I had.
Wow.
Yeah. How about that?
Are you Mark Posey or are you Ryan Pat? I don't know which. Maybe you're Mark Posey.
Like I said, until the bill collectors catch up with me, I'm whatever name
you want to say.
So we have another one here that says, you asked about fans meeting members of the cast. Unfortunately, I've had to do this vicariously so far. I have not met any of the MASH cast. However, both my mom and my daughter have met Loretta Swit. My mother's story is by far the funniest. My mom was eating at a local restaurant in Sarasota, Florida, I believe, and Loretta Swit was sitting at a table across from her. My mother walked up to Loretta and said, "Hot lips!" to which both she and Loretta shared a laugh. My daughter met Loretta last year, and she was again in Sarasota, Florida. She was appearing at a local restaurant to sign autographs and support for a local animal rescue. My daughter did buy Loretta's book of watercolors and have it autographed, as well as getting a photo of Loretta autographed for me. She also got a picture of Loretta, lucky girl. Oh. And thank you for sending that. And that is from Amy Maza. Amy, thank you so much for sending that. We hear a lot of stories about Loretta Swit. She is out and about a lot at a lot of shows with her big book of watercolors and meeting fans. So it's nice that a lot of people are getting to meet Loretta Swit. And totally unrelated, but did I mention that we have a major announcement at the end of this podcast? Did I mention that?
You mean we have a major announcement? MASH Matters has a major announcement?
Yes.
Go ahead and mention it.
Well, we do. We have a major announcement coming at the end of this episode. So stick around.
I'm going to stick around. And our friend Jamie Aragon says, I have had the honor of meeting 4 cast members. Alan Alda when he was doing a talk presentation about one of his books, Gary Berghoff when he was presenting some of his paintings in a local gallery, and William Christopher and Jamie Farr when they were doing the Odd Couple show you discussed. We got a backstage pass, so I got to go backstage and hang out with them a little after the show. Meeting Jamie, whom I'm named after, in Toledo just months after my family relocated here from Edwardsville, Illinois, was a very special moment, and he signed my autograph to my namesake. How cool to be named after a MASH star, a MASH act. I wonder how many people in the world have been named after MASH characters or stars. I mean, you have a dog named Walter.
I do. And my dog before Walter was named Sophie. I don't know of anybody personally, but aside from Jamie here, who has been named after a star on the show or one of the characters on the show. But if you've been named after a character or an actor on the show, we'd love to hear from you. And you can always get in touch with us at mashmatterspodcast.com. You can find us on Facebook. You can find us on Twitter. And like Jeff says, you can always just stop by the house.
Do I say that? Oh, that's kind of funny.
And if you can keep your story under 3 minutes, you can tell it to us when you leave a voicemail at 513-436-4077. All right, Jeff. So,
well, that's the episode. Thanks very much. Great working with you, Ryan. I'm going to redo my sock drawer, and I got to get there right now because those socks are so confused.
Jeff, here is the deal. It is time to share this story. Now, what I want to do first, though, is I want to take you back. I believe this is to episode 5 of MASH Matters. We're going to go way back in the Wayback Machine. And we're going to hear the original question that was posed by 2 different listeners to MASH Matters. So, I remember it like it was yesterday. Our next question comes from Grace Ann McLeod. And actually, this question was also asked by another person. John Hunt also asked this question. But in the season 6 opener, Fade Out, Fade In, you have a scene with David Ogden Stiers, but Johnny Hamer is dubbing your voice. Every time I see the episode, I wonder why that is. Did you have laryngitis? Thank you, Grace Ann for contacting us. And also thanks to John Hunt for sending in that same question. So that was the original question. And at the time, I said, Jeff, do you have an answer to this question? You said, well, I do, but I don't want to answer it just yet. And then over the course of the next few episodes, you pulled a magic number out of the air and said, you know what? I'm going to answer that question in episode 28. And see, now what you should have done is you should have said, I will answer that question in episode 528.
Well, we could do that. Okay, all right. There you go. I like that. Let's redo this. I'm sorry, I misspoke, Your Honor. We're going to do it on episode 528. Will that work?
I've never known of a coup of podcast listeners, but you might see one if we try to get out of telling this story today. So,
yeah, thanks a lot, Grace and John, for asking that question.
I went back and I watched the episode in question. Now, this is season 6, episode 1, Fade Out, Fade In.
Now, are you going to play that? We talked about this. You're going to play that?
I have the audio from that scene.
Okay.
This is the episode where we are first introduced to Major Charles Emerson Winchester III. And later in the episode, now in syndication, this episode is split into 2 parts, but I believe that it was originally aired as an hour-long episode. But in syndication, it's a part 1, part 2. This scene in question comes in part 2.
In terms of playing this episode, I just want to make clear, I have not ever heard it. I didn't watch the show. I didn't hear it when it was originally aired. I didn't see it in syndication. I haven't seen it in any of the reruns. I have never, ever, ever heard the exchange between myself and David Ogden Stiers in the Officers Club. So when you do this, this will be the first time in history. I mean, I guess I said words when I did the scene originally, which I do not remember. And this will be the first time I have ever heard the scene in question or the voice that you will hear speaking the words. So there you go.
Before I play the audio, to set this up, there is a scene later in the second part of the episode where Charles is in the Officers Club. He's having a drink before he thinks he's about to leave the 4077. And this is right before Colonel Potter comes in to tell him that he is now there permanently. Now, if there's any good news, Jeff, I believe that in the syndicated version, your exchange with Winchester is cut out. However, the DVDs and the streaming episodes on Hulu do feature this scene between you and Charles. So I'm going to play this audio now. When you hear the voice that is not Charles, it's obviously not Jeff's voice, but it is Jeff delivering these lines. These lines have been overdubbed. Whether it's Johnny Hamer or not, I'm not entirely sure. You be the judge. But here is the audio from this scene.
Where is that last Jeep? Is the best you've got?
I got some private stock, but it'll cost you a nickel more.
Oh, let's splurge.
Wow. We don't get too many guys like you in here.
Yes, I'm painfully aware of that. Make it 2. One for me, one for yourself.
What? I wouldn't drink that. I have a stomach and a family to think of.
Wow. What a memorable scene that was. And they cut that out in syndication? What crazy people they are. Oh, my goodness.
Jeff, I, along with everybody, have been waiting to hear the story behind this scene. And so I'm now just going to turn it over to you and let you tell it however you want to tell it.
He sighed. Well, thank you, Orion. Lovely to have you tell me all these interesting things. And it's lovely that you played that. Again, as I said, I have never heard that at all. I've never heard it in any shape or form. So hearing that actually gives more surprise to me that what happened. Because if obviously you played that and it wasn't terribly significant, there wasn't a huge reveal about anything that anybody would have really cared about in that little exchange. Mm-hmm. Why that was even in there, I'm not even sure. But
no, if anything, it stood out to MASH fans because it's obviously not you.
Yeah.
If it had been you, it would have been a nice, pleasant scene between Igor and Charles. Mm-hmm. But because it's obviously not Igor's voice, it stands out like a sore thumb.
Yeah.
And so people have taken notice of that. And obviously, we had Grace Ann and John both email us. And I think some other people have also sent us messages with the same question in the last year or so. I understand why lines sometimes are overdubbed because there are audio issues and they have to get the actor to come back in and redo the line to match up with the lips. But in this case, it's obviously not your voice. And so that's why it stands out in such a big way for fans.
Well, this is actually not my voice either right now. So it really doesn't matter I go with the wind. It doesn't matter. No. Well, that show was significant. It was a significant show, certainly, because they had a new major character come in. A major character replaced Major Frank Burns.
Right.
I know that there were also issues about Margaret's concerns about her husband and what he was doing, and that kind of foreshadowed that they may eventually split up. So there were things going on in that episode. That's kind of what it was significant. It was also significant. The reason it was significant to me was I was fired.
Really?
Yeah. I wasn't officially fired, but in actor terms, I was not asked back. And I didn't know that. Well, I'll explain how this happened. We were on the set. We were in the Officers Club. And it's small when you see it in real life. Maybe it looks small on television too, but it's pretty small. Everybody's pretty close together. And there's not a lot of space between the end of the set and where everybody stands and where the cameras are and everything else. So once you look up, if you're looking out towards the camera, you can pretty much see everybody that's there in the room. So we were there, and I remember being there. That's the good news. I do remember something. And I remember, I guess we rehearsed it. I kind of don't remember doing that. Rarely were they rehearsals because sometimes you read it before you did that. So in a small scene like that, there wasn't probably a big rehearsal needed. So I don't remember whether we did it or not. But I remember saying, okay, well, we're ready to shoot it. And I looked up at the camera, and almost every writer that was ever connected with MASH, or every significant executive that had anything to do with MASH, was standing there. And so I said, wow, what are those guys doing here? And it was kind of a shock, because normally you didn't see all the writers are up, writing. You don't see all those guys. Producers, everybody, and there were actually executives from Fox, and various people were standing there that would never really have been there. Well, in my young actor head, what would you expect? I thought, whoa, they're all standing here waiting to see me. Why would I think that? Well, there was only two people in the room, and I didn't know the other guy. What did I care about him? And so I figured, hey, they're all here to see what I'm going to do. Okay, this is pretty cool. And I will admit now to the world, it rattled me a bit. Now, here's the part that I don't have any, it's like a blackout. Not that I would know what a blackout would. Most people, drink a lot and have blackouts. Not that I would have ever done that or know what that feels like. But if I was to imagine it, I had a blackout from that point on. I don't remember doing the scene. I don't remember what happened after the scene. I don't remember going home. I remember it was early in the day, though. So past that, I don't remember anything else after that. The next day, I was at the studio. Obviously, we did the scene, and I went home. I do remember that it was directed by Hy Averback, who was a really cool guy who I loved dearly, and we were buddies, and he thought highly of me. We were good. We were good friends. So the next day, I was at the studio, and I wasn't doing anything. I was actually having lunch with somebody, and I came back. I was walking out of the commissary, kind of walking toward the front of the studio, and then to get in my car and go home. And one person who will remain nameless, but they had a lot of control and executive control over the show, walked up to me, and I said, "Oh, hi." And he said, "Jeff, you don't get a lot of times up to bat in this business." And I'm looking at him going, "Yeah." "Well, you blew yours." And he turned around and he walked away.
Wow.
Now, you can imagine, okay, you're a young actor guy trying to do what you're doing, or any business, whatever you do. If your, quote, boss walks up to you and goes, boy, did you stink. Wow, was that awful? You'd feel bad.
Yeah.
Well, boy, did I feel bad. I felt like I had just been kicked in the stomach by 600 or 700 yaks. I stood there for a minute because he just walked away. I was so devastated and so shocked that I didn't have the mental maturity or capacity at that point to kind of run after him and say, hey, wait a minute, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? So I just kind of left and went home, and I think I crawled into bed and started shaking. I did not know what happened. I still don't know to this day exactly what happened. But the reason that I say I got fired was, and there wasn't an official firing. Gee, Jeff, you're fired. Don't ever set foot on the studio again.
Right.
But I wasn't asked back. And then there was a subsequent script that had Igor in it that was then played by Peter Riegert. But the script itself said Igor. And another actor played the role of Igor.
Yes.
I think he just did it once. That was, I believe, in the same season, the sixth season. So that was the message that, oh gosh, there was something serious that had just happened. Now, I do know that the process of dailies, and that's what happens, and I think I misspoke on another podcast, you don't see the dailies in the same day you're shooting, you see them the next day. So they shoot a scene, and the next day everybody goes to dailies and they watch what, shooting the previous day. And everybody kind of evaluates it or said, gee, I like that, or that's funny, or we need a better joke or something. They all kind of make judgments about it. So apparently, when they saw the scene between myself and David in that particular moment, somebody didn't like what I did. Obviously, they didn't like it enough to motivate that particular executive to say something quite as mean-spirited as what he said to me. So that's what is really memorable to me as a person that, was trying very, very hard. I loved what I did. I loved being there. I loved everybody there. I loved my job voraciously. And I did it with a great deal of sincerity. I wasn't there to be a jerk off or a crazy person. I was there to do the job as well as I possibly could. So for a person of that kind of executive capacity to come up and say, boy, did you blow your moment, that was very, very hurtful to me.
Yeah.
So that's kind of why it's been such a significant moment for me, and why when people ask me, "Gee, why was your voice dubbed?" I start to shake and get real dizzy and nauseous, and it was a painful moment. One of the most painful things that ever happened to me. There were a lot of other painful things, not necessarily with MASH, but we all have pain in our lives.
Sure.
But that one, for a young guy trying to make his way through a very complex business filled with very, very complex people, that was a tough pill to swallow. So therefore, somebody made the decision, hey, we didn't like what he did. We're going to have to, dub his voice or have some other actor come in and deliver this. Now, two things I think that were particularly cruel. One of them was that I knew Hy Averback pretty well, and I'm very, very, very surprised that he didn't, if I was doing something stupid or I didn't sound very well, all he had to do is come over to me and say, hey, Jeff, when you're doing this, a little more energy or a little faster or a little quieter or be funnier or something. That's what directors are there to do.
Yeah.
Say something to actors. And I've been directed by a million different people, and you say, oh, yeah, it's a better idea. I like that. Thank you. That's all he had to do. And he could have done that easily. As you heard, the dialogue wasn't particularly, essential to any real thing.
It wasn't scintillating, no.
It wasn't Shakespeare I was delivering there. So all he had to do was, like, look, Jeff, talk faster, or something. And you get the idea.
Right.
And I could have made whatever adjustment he felt was necessary. He didn't do that. I think he didn't do that because there was a certain degree of tension. Everybody was watching David Ogden Stiers. I mean, even David Ogden Stiers was watching David Ogden Stiers. They were concerned about him. This was the new guy. They wanted to see what his rhythms were. They wanted to see who he was. They wanted to see the character, what he was doing in any given moment, because everybody wanted to be able to, adjust for it, write for it, understand it, hear his voice. So that was, and I certainly don't disagree with that. I understand that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Because of that, I think there was so much concern that if anybody kind of walked over and started directing me, there may have been concern, well, wait a minute, why is he directing this goofball? I'm the important guy here. Gee, there are, moments that go on a set like that. So I think that's what he didn't want to do, to take time to direct Igor when he had this very important new cast member that he had to deal with. Mm-hmm. So, and I think he didn't want to do that in front of a lot of people who were standing there, who were terribly frightening either. So I think they would have gone, hi, what are you talking to Igor for? What about him? Gosh, get over there and talk to David, for crying out loud. And the other significantly painful thing that I thought was out of line was what that executive said to me.
Yeah.
I felt it was mean-spirited. He didn't have to do that. He'd known me for a long, long time. He knew that I was a very sincere guy. It's impossible that he would not have known on some level that saying what he did to me would have devastated me at that moment. So he could have said, Jeff, boy, I got to tell you, why don't you come in? We'll redub you or something. He could have done it in 63 different ways.
Yeah.
But he chose to do it that way. And it's something I never forgave him for, although I'm working on it. And I thought it was particularly cruel. So that's the story, ladies and gentlemen. That's what happened. That's why my voice was overdubbed. Now, the good news. Shall I go on with the good news, or should we chat about something else?
Well, I'm curious. I'm wondering, is the good news how you got back onto the show?
Yeah.
Because obviously you came back for many, many more episodes. So how did you end up back on the show?
Well, I have a lot of really good mafia friends, and I just called a couple. They called a couple of guys. One thing leads to the other.
Yes.
Hey, I'm just kidding, mafia. I don't know anybody. I'm kidding, mafia guys. I'm kidding. I mean, I wouldn't have minded, but I don't. So, well, it's a really good question about how I got back on the show. I don't know the answer to that. I have a theory, and I spoke with somebody who I thought would know the answer to it yesterday, who is a significant part of the behind the scenes of the goings on of MASH. Mm-hmm. But she was unable to tell me as well. The story that I just related was a shock to her. She had never heard it. She didn't know it existed. And she was stunned when I told her, not only of the story, but she was also stunned by the behavior of the gentleman who said what he said to me. So I said, well, you got to know, how did I show up again? And actually, I got a call. I didn't know this was going to happen. I thought, I was thinking of trying to, look for really good ropes to hang myself with, or, good bullets, whatever, looking around for something good. And my agent called and said, hi, Jeff, by the way, they want you back. They got a new episode for you. Who wants me back? Who? Anybody? I don't care. And he said, no, MASH wants you back. They got Igor's back in the thing, and they want you in. So, and I made a good deal for you. Huh. You did? Really? Yeah, they paying you a little more money. Oh, that's great. So suddenly I was back. Now, why that happened, I have a theory. She couldn't tell me, and she actually said that she was going to try and find out a little bit more information and sort of see if I could, fill in the blanks, because they are kind of blank to me. I do know that I believe Fox wanted an extra show or something. They had to come up with an extra show, and it was a show that they hired a outside producer to come in and put together a conglomeration of episodes for that extra show. So it wasn't a new one that the writers write. It was a conglomeration of episodes. And I saw it. And in that show, I was featured a lot. Mm-hmm. I mean, I even forgot some of the scenes that I was in, but they were significant, numerous, and pretty funny.
Yes.
So I think on some level, somebody saw that and went, wait a minute, what are we doing? This guy's works. He fits with the camp. He's a good character. We can use him for a lot of different things. And he's a nice guy. What are we doing here? And I think that's what happened. I think, saner minds prevailed, and that's what went on. And I also think one of the motivations for the gentleman who was kind of mean-spirited in being mean-spirited is I think that for whatever reason, and this is, again, just a guess, it's possible that David Ogden Stiers didn't like my performance. Maybe he didn't like my timing or the rhythm or something. And he may have said during the dailies, I don't like that. I didn't like him when he did that. Who is it? I don't like that. And that may have embarrassed this particular gentleman because David was the new guy. And I think he was sort of embarrassed about it. Perhaps, I'm guessing. And that's what maybe motivated him to be quite, so nasty, because he wasn't normally a nasty guy. So that may be it. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen.
Wow. Well, I've said it before, I did not know the story coming into today. I had no idea what the story was. I just knew that it was a significant part of your life and your career, but I had no idea. I absolutely did not know. Now, I knew that you were not on all of the seasons of the show. There was a break in there. Now I know why. And I think your theory may be correct about the clip show. Yeah, maybe somebody high up watched it and goes, well, why is he not on the show anymore? He's funny.
Yeah.
You were obviously a contributor to the humor on that show. And I can't imagine that we would have missed out on so many other great things, like you creaming weenies and creaming the corn and creaming everything else in camp, and finding out that you're going to go back home and be a pig farmer and everything. Well, we would have missed all of that.
All of that. Lives would have been totally changed had I not been brought back. Well, not to pat myself on the back, but I did show up on the show, and I think, my head was always about comedy, and I had come from performing as in a comedy team and for years. So my head was in that frame, and coming into a show which was a totally different environment for me instead of nightclubs, I had to learn and I had to grow and I had to, adapt, which I think I did. And I kind of went after trying to, find a niche for me, because there were a lot of characters in that show. So it wasn't like suddenly they were going to give me, 10 minutes of screen time. That wasn't going to happen. Mm-hmm. But I tried very, very hard to find ways to just create a character of some kind that would have an attitude and would have some sort of attitude that would kind of fit with the set, fit with the environment, and fit with the structure of the show, and maybe have a future of some kind, and could relate to characters in a funny way. Yeah. I kind of gave myself a character that I felt I could relate to characters within and have fun with it, and hopefully, make people laugh. So that's what I was doing, and that's what I did. And so when this happened, it was pretty awful. Yeah. That was a really bad day at 20th Century Fox. So I hope that wasn't anticlimactic, and I hope that people didn't say, you're not going to walk away and go, is that it? Oh my gosh, I tuned into 28 of these things for that?
Well, we'll just see how many people show up for 29. My only question to wrap up this conversation, and we'll wrap up this and get to our big announcement. Going back, after you've had that is a shock to your system for that to happen, and then you spend some time away from the show, coming back to the show, what was it like coming back?
I was nervous. I was a little weirded out, but the minute I got back onto stage 9, it had such an ambiance to it. A lot of people say, oh, well, there were, it smelled bad and there were rats and it was dark and it was awful. To me, it was like heaven. I loved it. I loved it smelled bad. I loved watching the rats run around. I just adored it. I thought so much of it, and I was so impressed with the way the set looked and how the construction worked. I loved the whole system of movie making after that. I got totally addicted by it. So I was very, very impressed by everybody's skill to make this set look the way it did, and I loved being there. Creaky old boards of the floor and everything. I just adored it. So once I got back there, and I was there for about 5 or 10 minutes, and I saw people that were very friendly to me, I suddenly calmed down and it all kind of went away and we were back to normal. So
wow.
I was grateful for that. And and the gentleman who said what he said to me, I saw him. We were friendly, very cordial, polite. We didn't hug and kiss, but we were very friendly and nice to each other. And I did scenes that he had things to do with, and everybody was happy. So nothing ever came up. Nobody said a word about it after that, and that was the end of the story. So
wow.
I don't know. Stuff happens in showbiz.
It does, yeah. But it had a happy ending in the end. So
it had a great happy ending, yes, which I'm grateful to everybody for.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful to everybody staying 28 episodes to listen to this explanation.
Well, it's a heck of a story. So thank you for sharing that.
And I will say that I have never, ever publicly said anything that happened between me and that gentleman to anybody. One person, Kelly Nakahara, knows the story, but she didn't hear about it until about a year ago. So the only people that knew about it were myself, the gentleman had said what he said to me, and Kelly, and that was it. So now the other 4 people who are listening know.
We just doubled the amount of people who know.
Anyway, that's it. Thank you very much for asking, and hopefully we don't ever have to talk about this again.
Speaking of happy endings, let's have a happy ending to this episode as well, because we have a major announcement. We have had the pleasure of talking to many people on this show associated with MASH, whether it's writers behind the scenes, Dan Wilcox and John Rappaport, and Kelly, one of the supporting players. We've even talked to BJ, Mike Farrell, but now we are going to be talking to somebody else here on the show. And this is a big one. I said it was a major announcement, and it is a major because we're going to be talking to
Major Margaret Houlihan. Woo-hoo! There you go. Loretta Swit will be here on MASH Matters.
So the next episode, episode 29, will be part 1 of our talk with Loretta Swit, and it's exciting. Now, this is really one of the worst kept secrets among MASH fans, because a little while back, Loretta actually tweeted, "Hey, we had such fun speaking with Ryan and Jeff this weekend for my episodes of MASH Matters."
Oh, well.
So, the cat was out of the bag a long time ago that she was going to be on the show, but it was just a matter of when. So to kick off the new year, to kick off 2020, we will be releasing the first of 2 episodes featuring our conversation with the lovely and talented Loretta Swit. Very excited to talk to her.
It was so fun to talk with her, and it was so fun for MASH Matters. We've done this for a little over a year. We love doing this. Mm-hmm. And so to have Loretta on here and speak with her after a little bit of time was a real thrill.
We've had some wonderful people here on the show, and we've talked to some wonderful listeners and voicemails and emails and messages. We are just blown away, and we love hearing from everybody. Thank you so much. And we look forward to 2020 and not just talking to Loretta, but we also have some other folks we'll probably be talking to in the coming year as well. So we appreciate all of you coming along for the ride.
Is that it? Are we done?
That's it.
I was listening, and then you stopped talking. It was like The Sopranos, it just went to black.
Yes, we're done.
Okay, thank you.
Until next time.
Okay.
Here's looking up your old address.